Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Renee Christian Moya, and I'm the campaign coordinator with the Alliance of Californians for Community Empowerment, ACE. We're a statewide organization that fights for the rights of tenants, low-income folks, people of color in our communities. We're fighting for social justice every day. And I'm, of course, I'm currently being joined by, I'm sorry, I couldn't think of the words, my colleague, my beautiful colleague, Patricia Mendoza. Patricia, would you like to introduce yourself and maybe give a shout out to our folks watching us today?
Yes. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for being here, watching us, wanting to get informed. Thank you for, letting us in your homes, on your phones. I'm just glad to be here and, trying to give you all this information. My name is Patricia Mendoza, and I'm the statewide online to offline organizer with ACE. And I live in San Diego County. So
Awesome.
Go ahead, Renee. You have the
Well,
mic.
Patty, I have a very simple question for you. How's the weather been in San Diego?
It was really cold and ugly yesterday, but today the sun's really out. It's nice. I walked my son to school this morning. So
was it raining though in San Diego at all? I don't think it was.
Yesterday. It rained
Oh,
a
it
lot.
was.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I know that, today we're sadly not joined by Leah Simon Weisberg, our legal director for ACE. She's based in Northern California. And, from what I was hearing from friends and allies, it was really, really bad in Sacramento.
Yeah.
And in Oakland and the Bay.
Yeah, we saw that too. Me and my daughter saw that. We were like, oh my God, they're really getting stormed over there.
It was really bad here too. Well, not really bad, but it was wet and wild here in LA too. I personally am a big fan of it because I know that, we need the rain desperately, but at the same time, we shouldn't forget, that especially for a lot of our unhoused community, right? That the rainy season, cold season is oftentimes extremely dangerous for the unhoused, for the homeless. And so that's something we should always bear in mind. Like we know that we need rain in California desperately. It would just be great if we had, places for folks to permanently live, right?
Yeah, that's absolutely. You're absolutely correct. Yes.
So, folks, again, we're here on Tenant Talk Tuesday. We love Tenant Talk Tuesday. Today, basically, we wanted to talk a little bit about, again, where we are with the tenant protections as we normally have. But we also kind of want to start stabbing in the direction of what do we do beyond that, right? We know that in California, over the last year and a half, that because of COVID-19, we were in a situation where tenants were given an extra set of protections to stop like a tsunami of evictions from happening. And for the most part, it worked, right? In the sense that we haven't had like a tsunami, a deluge of legal evictions. Although we have, though, heard of plenty of informal evictions, right? And what we mean by that oftentimes is basically just landlords harassing their tenants out, doing illegal lockouts and the like. So it's been kind of a patchy sort of record, but those protections mattered, right, while they were in place. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, but we're going to talk about a little bit beyond that, right, as well. And we want to do this because we want to set up material for, really kind of prepare for what future episodes we'll be covering a little bit, right, Patty?
That's right. We do. We hear it all day, every day. Also, Renee, of these illegal lockouts, a lot of times people went through a lot of illegal lockouts. I spoke to a lot of people at, right at the beginning, right by September 30th and October 1st. And it just breaks my heart how, people can't be more human. You know what I mean? Everybody's hurting right now. Everyone is hurting. And I mean, we just, we need to get the word out there. We need to let these people know that they're not alone, that, we're here with them. And I know that sounds like it's not enough, but it just breaks my heart that, that they're going through these situations that no one, because of a pandemic, no one should be going through a situation like this. But that's
Absolutely.
why we're here, and we're going to keep you guys informed of how not to become, evicted or unsheltered or homeless, because we don't want that to happen to anyone.
Absolutely. And I think that was a very good reminder, Patty, that, well, first off, I think it was a great reminder that evictions lead to homelessness, right? So it's like we forget that pipeline. And it's something I think that sometimes we in the housing movement should get a little bit better about, right? Reminding people that, frankly, as long as we're allowing evictions to continue without stopping them, we are basically keeping the pipeline of homelessness open at all times, number one. But number two, also that I think we often forget to tell the story of how evictions also lead to like broader social problems, right? It actually leads to poverty. It's not just a result of poverty. It impacts your credit record. It impacts your ability to be able to move to another house. So I just wanted to start though, like the kind of the meat and potatoes of the conversation by just, reminding people like, October 1st rolled around. It's now been 25 days since October 1st happened. What happened on October 1st, Patty? If you could just very quickly just remind us of what happened.
Well, we lost all the protections. We thought we lost all protections because that's really what it came down to. Landlords thought, oh, they're done, the moratorium's over, let me start the process, let me start the eviction, let me go harass them, let me go put this note on their door. And like I said, we just need to be more human. Like I said, everybody's going through it, but we didn't lose our protections. I don't know if you want to talk about that, Rene.
Yeah, well, yeah, we could talk about that right now, but I guess we should just to remind folks, yeah, as Patty was saying, on October 1st, the non-payment protections expired, right? We basically that now landlords have the right to at least start the eviction process, but it doesn't mean though that tenants suddenly there's like a free for all for evictions, right? I mean, that's kind of the silver lining, the bit that you just mentioned, Patty, that we thought we lost all of the protections when really we haven't lost them entirely. What has happened though is again that the landlords now have the right to try to start an eviction, but so that everyone knows, and we're going to talk a little bit about the rental assistance program like we always do to make sure people know what their rights are. What it basically means is that the law has entered a new phase, right? Where now, basically, if a landlord wants to evict a tenant for non-payment of rent, they have to jump through some hoops first. They have to be able to prove that either the tenant didn't apply for rental assistance or that they didn't know or they haven't received any notification that the tenant has applied for rental assistance, or they themselves haven't.
Or that they have that they have no application, in process. Because if you have an application submitted, then you still have these protections.
That's right.
But yeah, but it's pretty scary, René, también, because you not only have these tenants.
I love that little Spanglish right there, by the way. Right, también.
I did that right. Oh my God, I'm sorry. So we also have these tenants, but then we also have this landlord who keeps harassing, you know what I mean? And where's the rent? And where's the rent? It's not moving fast enough. I'm still, I'm paying out of pocket here. Like, what's gonna happen? Are you sure that you applied? I get a lot of those calls. People are really scared. Like, Patty, how fast does this work? And before I started working, I applied for the help myself, and it took me about 2.5 months to get this help. And the first thing was they paid the electricity bill, and then they paid, so it's almost like 3 months, 2 months and 3 weeks, and then they paid the rent. So it is a long it's long, and people some landlords don't want to wait that long.
That's right.
Yeah, that's
scary. I think you also kind of touched on some of the stuff we're going to talk about in a second too, Patty, about landlords can start the ball rolling for non-payment evictions, but there are other things they can do too, right? There is the harassment they can start. There's also like other types of evictions they can continue to do now. And the rental assistance program doesn't protect them from that, right? So I think this is kind of the changing face of the kind of evictions that we're starting to see. And we'll talk about that in a second. But before I do, though, I just want to talk a little bit about the rental assistance program, right? So, October 1st happened. Patty, does that mean that you can't apply to the rental assistance program anymore?
No, that means more than ever you should go apply, more than ever, because that will be your only protection. I feel like it's like a little house, like a little shelter house, once you feel, it's like the housing is key, like the little house with the key. I feel like if if you fill this out, your home is protected by this. I see it as a indivisible protection, but that's how I see it. Most people, they don't know. But more than ever, I can't stress it enough. More than ever, please go fill it out. As long as you have an application in process, waiting, for it to be whatever the case may be. If it's pending, but it's submitted, it's completed, you're protected.
Yeah, and
For lack of payment, but
mhm.
we are seeing, and we're going to touch on that a little bit later, but we are seeing landlords, getting them out for any other thing. Those are the loopholes, but we'll get into that later on. But first things first, please apply.
And I'm sorry, Patty, but where should tenants apply? Totally forgot what the name of the website is. Where do they apply for the assistance?
Housingiskey.com.
Say it again for the people in the back.
Housingiskey.com.
Housingiskey.com. And if our lovely comms team is hearing this right now, if they can drop it in the comment section for our viewers, that would be great. Housingiskey.com is the website where all of you should be applying to the rental assistance program. Last episode, Patty, I think you remember, and other viewers might remember, we actually walked through it, right? We actually walked through 2 applications. We went through, I think it was the Fresno County application process, if I remember correctly, or was it Riverside? I think it was Fresno. And then we did the statewide one as well, right? So we were trying to show people, like, look, this is something that works and that folks should be applying to. So housingiskey.com. I'm going to try to drop it in the chat right now. Like we've been saying, it's not going to stop you from getting harassed or other forms of evictions. This is why in the chat right now, I'm seeing it, by the way, Patty, but we have one tenant, Keisha Unger, and on Facebook is saying that she's being threatened as of this morning. She's being harassed, right, by her landlord. So we are still seeing this. But if they're harassing you mostly about not paying your rent, that is what Patty is saying again, right? Make sure to apply to the rental assistance program, housingiskey.com. Patty, before we,
I think so. Also, Rene, I think that we need to let them know. Also, like, I'm not sure, Keisha, how what your case is. I'm gonna ask. They can drop my email on the chat also, so maybe you can contact me and we can talk about it. Because after you apply for this rental assistance program, please write a letter to your manager, to the owner. Write a letter to whoever you pay the rent to. Make sure it's a written letter. And even if you want to even play it safer, go to the post office and mail it through the post office, because
certified mail.
Yes, certified mail. Just letting them know, hey, my name is so-and-so. I live in this address, this apartment complex, or this house, and here's my application number. I applied for the rental assistance program. This way they know, and they're like, okay, well, she applied. At least she's doing something, right? At least the tenant's doing something, and it can defeat the purpose of him starting the eviction.
That's
process.
right.
So it helps. Right. You benefit from that, please.
That's absolutely right. So again, go to housingiskey.com. It's a great place to start. I do want to actually talk a little bit about harassment in a bit, but before we do that, I actually want to open up something and show folks on the screen, if I can actually manage to do this, because I'm a little bit technically less savvy with this, because I'm currently using a new bit of technology, so I might not get it correct, but I think this is it. Patty, can you see my screen right now?
I sure can.
Awesome. So folks, I'm only showing you this screen because we keep talking about the rental assistance program, right? But we haven't yet really truly covered, I think, sometimes just what is what is the program, how much money is going out, and how much money has already been paid out, right? So what you're seeing here, you can actually find it on the housingiskey.com website under the name dashboard near the bottom. And what it shows is the number of applications that have been filed for rental assistance in the state of California. So we see right now, according to the dashboard here on this side, I don't know if you can see my mouse, 457,000 applications have been filed. By the way, that's quite a bit of folks, because the average renter household in California has something like 2.9 people living in it. So, if that number holds with this, then well over 1.2, 1.3 million people are currently seeking rental assistance, right? Or are living in households that are seeking rental assistance. So 457,000 applications have been received. And a total of, I don't know if you could see it here on the side, but $4.8 billion have been requested from the program. $4.8 billion. That's an incredible number, right? But of the $4.8 billion that has been requested by tenants in California, if on the right-hand side, you could see only $994 million have been paid out by the program. So only like 20%, one out of every $5 that have been requested has been paid out. I mean, Patty, what does that tell you, right? That it's extraordinary, right? Like basically a lot of the money has not been paid out yet.
Yeah. So, we need to do something to, and in this case, it's not only help the tenant, but it's also to help, some of the nice landlords that are out there trying to help their tenants not get, dispersed or evicted, it works, like I said, it works hand in hand, they keep their families protected and they get their money, and, everybody's, happy, everybody's protected. But some, we always know that there's some bad actors out there, and, they still want to go ahead and do what's not right. And this is I can't stress enough, this is the only way. And every time I get these calls, this is the only way you're going to stay protected. If you need the rental assistance, there's still a lot of money in that funding and that account. Go, apply.
That's right. And so again, housingiskey.com, like we've said, nearly $5 billion have been requested from assistance, but only less than $1 billion has been paid out right now. What does that do though? So what that does, obviously, for all of our viewers and for a lot of folks who have commented in the past and currently, we know that a lot of tenants are facing harassment, right? They're facing a lot of pressure from their landlords. We're seeing landlords who have attempted illegal lockouts. So our LA office in Los Angeles, the Los Angeles ACE office, I think received something like 5 or 6 notices for illegal lockouts in just the weekend after the tenant protections expired. So, and then of course we have other types of evictions that are not about non-payment that are going through. So in general, what we're seeing is almost like, if you will, it's almost like landlords realize that they can't just get rid of their tenants for non-payment evictions, and they're attempting to do other things to try to push out those tenants, right? So the question then becomes like, is there nothing we can do? Like, Patty, if I have to ask you, like, is there nothing we can do? Is that it? The state said no more protections. You either apply to the rental assistance program and that's it. That's all you have. Like, what do you say to that?
Yeah, no, this is why we continue to fight. This is why there's organizations like ACE, that we continue to fight for stronger protections, to build this, to stop all evictions, because this is something that should not be happening. I totally understand. Everyone's stressed right now. Everybody's short on cash, especially us working class folks, right? Especially us, it hit us extremely hard. So, I mean, it's just crazy. A lot of people are scared, Renee. A lot of people are scared, but this is why we continue to fight for stronger protections. And if LA passed these strong protections, then why not San Diego? Then why not San Francisco? Then why not everywhere? No, why not the whole state of California?
And let's just talk about those stronger protections. So for those who are viewing this broadcast, this is kind of important. I think it didn't get, frankly, the kind of news coverage that it should have received, which is that, for many years, the tenants movement in LA had been fighting for something like an anti-tenant harassment bill or ordinance. A law that would protect tenants against harassment. It was a law that was initially being pushed for locally by the LA Tenants Union in Los Angeles, and then the baton was picked up by the broader sort of movement in the city, and ACE really kind of like took the lead in trying to fight to get it passed at the city council, and then it did, right? It finally passed after a lot of our members and folks in the general public who basically were phone calling and lobbying and pressuring their landlord, doing protests. We got this anti-tenant harassment ordinance, which basically says that there's a number of things that qualify as harassment, and I can't think of it off the top of my head, all of them, but basically that says, look, there are certain types of activities that landlords do that were not illegal before this year, that made it easier to pressure tenants to get pushed out of their houses, right? What this new ordinance does is basically to say that constitutes a form of harassment of tenants, right? Some of these behaviors. And it basically then says that landlords can get penalized for that activity. The law is still not as strong enough as we want it to be, because we want to make sure that the housing department here in LA can enforce it, that the onus is not on the tenant directly to go to court and sue the landlord for it. But it's a very strong step in the direction of saying, hey, as tenants, we deserve the right to live comfortably, peacefully in our houses, right? We don't need to be harassed by our landlord just because our landlord wants to get rid of us outside of the law. And I think that that's kind of a very important precedent there, right? And Patty, like as a question on that, like, I mean, how often do you hear these stories of harassment when you're talking to tenants? Is this like something that you encounter all the time?
Even before the moratorium ended. And it brings tears to my eyes, because why are people living like this? Like, why do you think you can go and you can just harass someone? I mean, it happened to me. It happened to me and my children. And why do you feel the need to go over there and tell them you have no protections? You need to get the hell out. That's exactly what they told me. And you need to live by this date, and it's scary. I've never been through a no eviction process. Like many people have never been through an eviction process, but because of this pandemic and everything that's been happening, it's happening. People are getting locked out. And I promise you, Renee, I hear this all day, every day. And I've never heard a landlord call and say, well, they're harassing me. I never heard a landlord call me and be like, the tenant's harassing me. No, it's always the landlord's harassing the tenant. It's either because you haven't paid the rent. Okay, well, I'm not going to kick you out for that, but I'm going to kick you out for this. I want to move back into my house, or my daughter wants to move it back in the house. And, there's always something. There's always something. And this is why we need to fight for stronger protections. This is why we need more people like on this call. We need to come together. You need to know that we're there for you, like you're there for us. And, and empower each other for stronger protections to fight, because this is not right. This is not right. And I hear it every day, Renee, every day.
Oh no, Patty. And just, just to add to that, in my years organizing tenants, I've heard like so much like crazy stuff. I was going to use an expletive, but this is a kosher, family friendly program, folks. It's all the kids can watch as well. No, but I've heard things like, for example, like landlords deliberately upending their trash cans, like throwing out all the trash on on the driveway of the apartments or on the lawn to piss off the tenants. I've seen landlords, horrible stuff where they destroy the gardens that tenants have been planting for years. They chop down all the trees. They take out they uproot the plants, so that it's like a very ugly kind of place with no life in the buildings. I've seen, obviously one common tactic is that landlords will often allow repairs to go unrepaired, basically undone. I mean, you name it. I've heard of landlords who go daily to people's homes, knocking over and over and over again, trying to get them to respond. And the problem is that, like, again, before this ordinance was passed in places like LA, there were few protections, like if you called the cops being like, my landlord's harassing me, the cops would just respond by being like, oh, this is a domestic matter. It's a matter between the two of you. It has nothing to do with us. I mean, that culture of impunity, right, for abusive landlords needed to change. And so I think that we're finally starting to move in that direction with that ordinance. So you're right. But the question that you just posed, why can't we, get it in other parts of the state? And if you had to give a quick response to that, Patty, like, how do we win it? Like, what is the lesson in places like LA?
I mean, just fight for stronger protections or get organized, get organized. Look at how LA did it. LA did it. And they did it by what? By people sharing their stories, by people showing, the type of harassment they were going through. If and I'm just one voice, but if we get all of these voices and all of these stories together, it will happen. It will happen because this is something that needs to be stopped.
That's right.
People should not live in fear. And I always say this, Renee, and you always know that. I always say, when we lose our fear, they lose their power. And this is why you need to get organized. This is why you need to jump on board with ACE. The organization is going to back you up, then, back it up, because we're like a big ACE family, and we're statewide. This is California. This is, why do we have to live? This is not, it's just unreal, and people call your city council, call your board of supervisors, call your governor. This is what we do on a daily basis. This is what we do. This is how we fight. This is how we organize. We have protests, we have caravans, and all of our protests are friendly. I always take my children. They love it because they feel so empowered. My son forgets about his little panic attacks that he's developed. My daughter, she loves holding on to her boards. She's there with me. I mean, it feels good to fight for justice, to fight for housing is a human right.
That's right. And so, well, talking about like these things, I think we've established, right, that we can do more beyond the eviction protections that already expired. The first thing that we just mentioned is the anti-harassment ordinance, right? This is something that some cities have already passed. LA is the biggest one that has passed it. There are other cities that are talking about it. I know that recently there have been attempts to pass something like this in Contra Costa County in Northern California. Another thing that has been mentioned a lot, there's a law called the Tenant Protection Act of 2019, otherwise known as AB 1482. And for those of you who are kind of listening into right now to the program, AB 1482 was a law that was passed in 2019. It was signed by the governor, and it basically does two main things, right? If I had to just distill it quickly for listeners. Number one is that it set up a rent cap. That means that it basically limits how much the rent can increase on a year-to-year basis for many tenants in California. Not all of them, but for many tenants in California, for those tenants who don't have rent control, right? So if you live in a city that has rent control, your rent control ordinance is stronger than the statewide rent cap. But for those who don't live in a rent-controlled city, you do have at least this protection against, for many of you, have this protection against rent increases that are too high. It basically caps rents at up to 10% a year, right? 5% plus the local rate of inflation. The other thing that this law does is that it gives just cause protections for many, though not all, tenants in California. And just cause protections, if you're listening in and you don't know what that is, a just cause protection basically says that your landlord has to be able to have a good reason, a good cause to evict you. It can't just be for no reason. It has to be for some very specific reasons. Sometimes those reasons are because you yourself did something bad. For example, you broke the law, you broke the lease, etc. That is grounds for an eviction. But sometimes, of course, there are things that you don't do that a landlord can still evict you for, unfortunately. Things like, for example, when a landlord wants to invoke the Ellis Act, or, for example, if a landlord suddenly says that they're going to have to do substantial rehabilitation, whatever. There are, unfortunately, what I would consider loopholes in those protections. Nevertheless, there are these protections, like this minimum standard of protections for most California renters, right? AB 1482. But maybe that's something we need to improve on, right? Talking about things that we need to do now in the wake of the eviction protections being passed. Maybe we need to strengthen AB 1482. Maybe we need to allow local city governments to pass stronger rent control, right? Things that right now they can't do. So, I mean, I don't know what you think about that, but does 10% sound like a low enough rent increase for you, Patty? Or let me put it to you this way. How many people do you know are receiving 10% rent increases? I mean, income or wage increases every year? How many bosses are giving out 10% wage increases every year?
Yeah, none. And this is the sad part, right? Like you hit it right there. Our rent goes up to almost 10%, some even more, some even more,
For those who don't have the protection, yeah.
And why? When our money's still the same. We don't get no raises. We don't, and how can we fix this? How can we fix this? Again, we organize, we fight. It's just, and you know what? We won this when we won back in 2019. We won this. Why we didn't, this law just didn't pass itself. People fought for this law. People did what we're continuing to do. I just got on board with ACE in April, so I've been nonstop, but people have been doing this since 2019. So that just means we need to continue to work and continue our process and continue to organize and continue to fight, because this is the only way we're going to, get better protections for
That's right.
For all of us.
That's right. So again, we've mentioned two things, right, that we could be doing moving forward. And maybe these are topics for a future Tenant Talk Tuesday, right? We can talk about the anti-harassment ordinance strategy. We can talk about strengthening AB 1482, right? The rent cap and the, rent control, and then just cause protections. What about this little law that just sadly got vetoed recently? There's a little law called AB 1487, right? Patty, just to remind viewers, ACE and a big coalition of organizations statewide supported this law called AB 1487. It would have created this thing called a homelessness prevention fund that would have given money from the state to be able to educate, tenants, to do outreach to tenants, and also to provide legal services to tenants. So Patty, let me ask you right now, like in large parts of California, if you're facing an eviction and you need a lawyer, does the state help you?
No.
Right.
No, it doesn't. And why not? And why not? When every time somebody gets arrested for whatever thing that they think they're doing right or wrong, you get representation. So why don't tenants? When they take us to court for whatever reason, that God forbid, I've never been there, but half of the time our tenants are the ones that are, displaced, or they always believe the landlord because the landlord is represented by, an attorney. Why? Because the landlord has the money. But, the tenant was a good tenant. He just couldn't pay the rent because of this pandemic. That doesn't make him a bad tenant. He's still trying to get you your money. So, where does it fall? I mean, why do tenants fall through the cracks? I mean, it's not right.
We need statewide. We need a right to counsel, frankly, right? We need to ensure that tenants have a permanent right to legal representation when they're facing eviction. And you know why? This is something that I'd say, normally when we say that tenants have a right to a lawyer for criminal purposes, I think the idea is really that, being tried for a crime is a very serious and life-altering thing, potentially. Obviously, you can go to jail, right? But my response to that would be to say, look, getting an eviction, being evicted is also a life-altering, life-upending, and like I said earlier, poverty-inducing experience for people, right? So if we do think that evictions can cause all of these social ills, if evictions equal death, like we say correctly, because we did see recently an academic paper that showed that the strong link between basically evictions and housing precarity and increased deaths of COVID-19, we know that evictions equals death. If that's the case, then we should be doing everything we can so that tenants can get protection. And why should we do it? It's because according to some statistics that I saw earlier this year, 3% of tenants, oh, you can't see my number there. 3% of tenants show up to court. 3% of tenants show up to court with legal representation, while landlords, 83% of landlords show up to court with legal representation. Does that sound fair to you? Does it sound fair that almost every landlord shows up to trial with an attorney and practically no tenants? Like, are you shocked by the fact that the majority of tenants lose their eviction trials?
Yeah, and then they're put on this blacklist, right? And then nobody will ever rent to you again. They have a hard time renting. Everything, they've like, let's just say that person's been there for 15, maybe 20 years, and because of one eviction, their whole report, their whole credit report goes to the trash. And not only that, nobody will ever want to rent to him. You already have eviction. So a lot of times they have to ask somebody else to co-sign. And some people don't let you do that anymore. In some places, they're like, no, it has to be the person that's going to be living here. So it makes it twice as hard for them,
That's right.
Yeah, that's why we need to continue to fight for AB 1487.
Or something, or like the right to counsel, right? Like the general idea that tenants deserve legal representation. I mean, so we've already mentioned 3 major things, right, that we can be fighting for at the state and local level. Like, it's crucial for us to remember that some of these things are things that we can fight for locally. We don't have to wait for the state, We know that politicians in Sacramento are bought and paid for by the real estate industry, and they are locally too. But the difference is that we have a lot of power, right, in specific locations, and we should flex that power, right? We know that we can hold our feet to the fire a little bit. So we've talked about, again, like the anti-harassment ordinance. We've talked about changing 1482 and or rent control laws. We've also talked about we need the right to counsel. Another thing I'm going to throw out there: corporate landlords, right? Like, this is, I know, a very favorite, fantastically very ACE-friendly topic of conversation. We love going after corporate landlords in California within ACE itself. As an example, not only do we organize campaigns against specific corporate landlords facing or pushing tenants out, we also are currently, or have in the past, try to pass laws that would hold them accountable in different ways, right? So one of these laws, Patty, I think you know a lot about this already, is the law AB 1199. It's one of the bills that we are trying to pass over the coming few months. What that law would do is that it would put an excise tax, a special tax, on corporate landlords, on the biggest landlords, so that they could be basically financially accountable, right, to the fact that they are monopolizing larger or buying up more and more of our communities. And then it would also, though, impose like a transparency component in the law. It would basically say that if you're hiding behind an LLC, right, as a landlord, we deserve to know who actually owns the LLC, who is the person who's benefiting from that LLC, right? So basically, it would bring transparency, because I know of plenty of tenants that we organize, right? Where the tenants don't know who their landlord is. Like, have you encountered that at all, Patty? I don't know if you have.
I have, and and it's sad because a lot of times they don't even know who they're paying the rent to, I mean, I had a case where somebody came and they said, I'm the new landlord, I'm the new manager now, you're gonna have to pay the rent to me, I'm gonna come and pick up the rent all the time. And it was nobody. This person was just picking up the rent. It was nobody that belonged to the property manager. These people, where are they? A lot of times they don't fix their leaks, they don't fix their ceilings, they don't fix, and they're paying a lot of rent, and their rent keeps going up every year as well. Some swimming pools are full of dirt.
Oh yeah, I've seen that.
They're paying for amenities that they don't even use,
That's right.
and it's sad. And these corporate landlords keep getting richer and richer and richer, and our tenants keep getting poorer and poorer, and they get forgotten, and some of them have to move out because the apartment is not habitable. They can't be there no more. Some people live infested with roaches. I had another case where a roach went in a little girl's ear. And
oh my gosh,
do you think these corporate landlords live like this? Then no, right? Then why should we? If
Do we
we
think
can,
that Steven Schwartzman, the CEO of Blackstone's living like this? No, we know they're not,
no,
right? So
no, I'm pretty sure he's never even seen a roach.
that's
So
right.
really, like,
Just look it up on
why?
Wikipedia, on Google Images, you know?
Yeah,
No, I think that's right, Patty. I think that like generally we know that these are some of the largest corporations on earth. Their owners are like billionaires, right? Like, yeah. So I think it's important that we're basically one of the things that we think of doing that we really start to do right at the state and local level is go after these corporate landlords. The final thing though, Patty, that I really think that we're definitely going to talk about this in a future episode of Tenant Talk Tuesday is we need to do something about building and buying the housing that we need in California. What kind of housing is that? I mean, like housing that is permanently affordable, housing that is not on the private market, that is not on the speculative market, because we know that the moment that landlords snap up certain types of property, that what is it that happens? That housing suddenly becomes more expensive, right?
yep.
That they evict the tenants en masse. A lot of really like sketchy, terrible stuff happens, as a result of that. So we need it off the speculative market. We need that housing to be permanently affordable. It should be controlled by us, right? And it should be there, and there should be real public dollars. Ultimately, we really do need the state, local, and federal governments basically to step in and actually provide the housing. Like we've been through this road so many times now, right? This idea that we're building affordable housing eventually somehow. Let's give tax incentives here and let's give some subsidies to landlords there and let's do this and that and whatever. And it's not working, right? It's not working. Like what we really need, frankly, is for the government really to take its head out of the sand, right? To step in and do something about that. So I mean, and this, by the way, so that our viewers know, is what we often call social housing. Social housing is basically means like essentially the state in effect helps guarantee the accessibility of a large part of housing or of the housing stock by buying up existing housing and making sure that it has social rents, so very low rents comparatively speaking, but also that it is permanently affordable, off the market, et cetera, et cetera. Community land trusts is something that we in ACE have been fighting for a while too. They are a component of social housing, right? That's housing that is controlled by us, that is permanently affordable, and it's off the market, right? It's off the speculative market. So these are all solutions I think that we really need. I don't know what you think about that, Patty. But
I mean, I think you're right, because we have these corporate landlords coming from everywhere. And not even California. They're coming from out of state. They're coming from out of the country. They're coming from, Wall Street, where their money's not enough. Don't they make enough already? Like, why do they want to come and buy, homes that are affordable for us now and then raise the rents? Like you said, a lot of people are worried right now because Blackstone is buying a lot of these buildings here in San Diego County, over 600 buildings. And a lot of people are like, oh my God, I'm scared my rent is going to go up. And some people's rents have gone up, and other people's, we haven't heard of any evictions yet. And we pray we don't, but just rents are going up. The apartments are not getting fixed. So, it's an unbalanced, it's really unbalanced. Like they
that's
get
right.
richer and they live still like we still live in poverty, and they want to make these apartments, better. And, but then while they're doing that, they just displace you. They just kick you out. They don't care.
They're not making it better for you. They're making it better for someone with more money, And I want to actually show, Patty, I don't know if you could see it, the comment on the screen, but it's from Helen Duffy. Helen actually dropped this comment on Facebook. Thank you, Helen. I'm going to read it out quickly, but she says, yes, let's push the state, local, and federal government to create social housing, permanently affordable housing, right? Other countries like Spain, Austria, Mexico managed to do much of this. There is no reason to just let private interests buy up all of what should be a human right. And I think ultimately that is a good place for us to start to end this. Duffy, we completely agree that ultimately, for me at least, social housing is one of the biggest steps we can take in the direction of doing the thing that we all at ACE say needs to happen, which is to make housing a human right. And it'll only be a human right, frankly, when we can guarantee, when again the state steps in and guarantees for all of us the ability and the actual housing stock, right, for people to have, so that they can have a decent, clean, affordable, place they can permanently call home. There's no reason why tenants can't have a permanent place to call their own and live with dignity. And I think, to me, ultimately, if we do want to make housing a human right, we need social housing here in California, and we need it now.
Yes.
So on that note, Patty, we are at 12:48. I think we are approaching time. We've talked a lot today about a lot of the things, a lot of these different fights that we can be having beyond the COVID-19 protections. We know, again, that the eviction moratorium, unfortunately, is no longer with us, but it does mean that we have to fight like hell for some of these other bigger, bolder, policy changes so that tenants can have more protection statewide. And we're going to talk about these in future episodes, right?
Yes, of course. I think these are very important, topics. And I'm glad that we brought it up today, because that way, our viewers know, hey, next Tuesday, it's going to be even better than this Tuesday. It's always going to get better and better, because we're going to need our backup. Where's our foot soldiers? We're going to need, people on this call today, like Helen Duffy. Thank you so much. That comment was, that was rad. I'm glad that you agree.
Chef's kiss, as they say on Twitter, right? That's right. All right. Well, folks, thank you so much for joining us on Tenant Talk Tuesday today. We've started to give a little bit of a preview of some of the things that we're going to talk about in the next few weeks, coming months, in fact. We're going to continue, of course, to talk about the crisis around rental assistance. And we're going to continue to monitor, basically, how are evictions going right now for non-payment of rent. We know that this is not an issue that's going to go away easily. So we will continue to talk about this, but we will in future, though, episodes talk more about these broader permanent solutions that we need. So with that, Patty, I don't know if you want to say a quick goodbye before we jump off.
Yes, I just want to say thank you so much, Keisha, Helen, Jason, everyone that was on this call today, Dwayne, everyone. Please, if we didn't answer your questions on this call, my email is on there. It's on the chat. It's pmendoza@calorganize.org. pmendoza@calorganize.org. Please, if we didn't answer your question, yes, please email me, and I will do my best to, back to you and help. Thank you again so much for being here. And
well, very quickly, if you are a Spanish speaker, you prefer to listen to this broadcast in Spanish, in about 10 minutes, we're going to have Martes de Inquilinos with the two of us as well, but speaking Spanish this time. Thank you so much, folks. We hope to see you in the next couple of weeks on the next Tenant Talk Tuesday. Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Tell your friends.